ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow. Okay. Okay, Basil. Okay. So I want to make sure dial tone. Yep, we're good to go. Okay. Okay, we're not ready to start taking calls right yet. This is Basil BuddhaCat Presents, but we're not really. Basil, it's our caller from Friday evening. Okay. Okay, Basil, she asks, have you been looking at the words Dalai Lama and trying to rearrange them into some other words like the caller in did with rearranging the letters in Barack Hussein Obama and coming up with some fearful things. She came up with letters in Barack Hussein Obama, and she came up with a car bomb in USA, shake. And also came up with car bomb shake sauna with a couple of A's left over. Okay, Basil has not because really, in fact, Basil says once he got past taking the LA and La that he really didn't see anything of note. No, hold on now. Make sure you got your letters right there because there's no Y. There's an I and not a Y, so you can't really use. You're really not going to find the word malady in Dalai Lama. You're not going to find malady, so you really can't. That's really stretching it to do that. But aside from that, have you come up with anything yourself? Basil, she says no. She hasn't come up with really anything. So okay. When we start the show, we'd like to have you call back and maybe go into a little bit more detail about that. Thanks for calling. I'll talk to you in a little while. Okay. You didn't, Basil. Okay. I don't know how long it's been. Welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. My name is David Stevenson. I'm Basil's co-host and interpreter. Center slot, Basil BuddhaCat himself. And as we spoke on Friday night, on the Friday night show, we're going to continue on this fine Sunday morning talking about fear. Because Basil, as he explained in the Friday night show, Basil sees fear as being the overarching problem that we face as human beings on a worldwide basis. Basil says cats aren't into fear. Cats don't, and correct, I want you to tell me exactly, because I want to make sure I get this exactly right, Basil. Basil says that cats don't get into the idea of fear because, in fact, they're too busy. Okay, yeah, it says they're too busy eating, pooping, and most importantly, napping. Now, Basil, I know you're up for about an hour Friday night and about an hour Sunday morning, but how much time do you sleep? Well, Basil says that he sleeps the rest of the time, pretty much. He's up, scratches himself, licks himself, eats, and back to dreamland. Okay, so unfortunately, we humans don't have that the benefit of being able to do that, and you know why not. Basil says, why not? Why can't you just do that? Why can't you just... Now, you might think, Basil, that that when you're up on top of the covers, that you've got Kristen and I pinned down. The same way that your housemate Lilith thinks that when she sneaks in under the covers that she's got us trapped. But that's not the case. You know that. You know that's not the case, Basil. Basil said, "Yeah, sure, whatever you say." Okay. At any rate, okay, Basil. Now you wanted to talk this morning about the overarching, continue that overarching theme of fear. but you had mentioned on our Friday show that you wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about religion, because Sunday morning, this is your religious day, this is your religious show, this is what you like to focus more on religion when we do our Sunday morning show. So have at it. Okay? Basil says he wants to start off with what we were discussing last week with Sarah Palin and some callers in, talking about the Obama administration ruling about birth control and the firestorm that created, and Basil doesn't want to single out or pick on the Catholic Church, but he says the Catholic Church was the most notable screamer and yeller, ranter and raver about the process, about having to, in their words, go against their own religious principles and their own religious doctrine, and provide the pill for women who are under who enter their hospitals, Catholic run hospitals, for treatments, and also insurance plans that they administer. Now, clarify that a little further, because why do you see that as? What's the problem with initially with the? Let's start with the Catholic Church and work from there. What's the problem with the Catholic Church getting into the healthcare business, running hospitals, operating hospitals, and having insurance plans for their own employees and also for other folks? Okay, Basil's saying that when the Catholic Church takes that great leap from being a church to being a for-profit enterprise, that it should, in fact, it should not be not have the latitude that a church has. We have separation of church and state. Church's freedom of religion, freedom of expression, certainly. That we says when the Catholic Church steps away from takes that great leap from being a church to being a for-profit enterprise, when they own hospitals, run hospitals, make a profit there, when they step into the public domain with hospitals and with insurance providers, that they in fact should be under they should follow the law of the land. He says they should follow the rules that the country provides for everyone. They shouldn't have special exception from the laws of the United States of America, because they've chosen to step outside of the religious domain and come into the for-profit domain. Okay, now how does that tie in with the overarching thoughts about the overarching discussion about fear? Okay, yeah. Basil says it really doesn't, other than the fact that there was a lot of fear flying around when the Obama administration, made their ruling. There was this firestorm of opposition from for the most part, Republican presidential candidates, heads of the members of the Catholic Church, members of the more right-wing, more conservative, if you will, the more right-wing evangelical Baptist churches, and they screamed and screamed and screamed. And this is Basil's words. He's emphasizing this. They screamed about how their religious freedoms were being trampled on, that they should be able to do pretty much anything they want to. Now Basil, we had Newt Gingrich on the show, third week on. We had Newt Gingrich on, and Newt Gingrich had made a remark in campaigning at that point through New Hampshire about the notion of school children being encouraged to participate in routine cleaning, maintenance, if you will, cleaning activities, taking care of their own schools, and how that would, he thought, be good in terms of practical experience, but also good in terms of a cost-saving advantage for school districts. Okay, Basil's he says, just thinking about what Newt Gingrich said makes his whiskers twitch in his ears, just open up wide, and matter of fact, his eyes are rolling right now. So you can see how that affected him. Now Basil said on many counts, that's just. Yeah, that was your grandpa's word. Yeah, my dad. That was Basil's adopted grandfather's word, hogwash. Basil said, pure, unadulterated hogwash. That having kids actively involved in doing any kind of cleaning, other than making sure they put their chairs up on top of their desks, picking up after themselves, being as clean. And just being good citizens in terms of being clean, taking care of not making a mess in the lavatories, things of that nature. That other than that, having kids taking care of maintenance and janitorial work inside the school deprives, in all probability, a lot of those kids' parents' work. Okay, so your point. Okay, Basil's hasn't got smoke coming out of his ears, but he's. I just saw there's another twitch of the ear. Basil says that that when you take away jobs, and Basil says that Newt Gingrich's motive was to make nice with the anti-union crowd, and that's not just the Tea Party members of the Republican Party so much as it is mainstream Republicans who have traditionally been more tilted toward government and less tilted away from labor, more tilted away from labor, but also the neoconservative group in the Republican Party, folks that he says Newt Gingrich is the best emblem, or the worst emblem, if you will, of the neoconservative branch of the government. He says Mitt Romney is the more representative of the more traditional Republicans, Republican members, the Republican Party members. Says that he says Ron Paul, who's also been on the show, and Basil had a lot of agreement with Ron Paul on the notion of America not getting involved in nation building, not having military bases all over the world, that America guarding our borders specifically, defending our country, but not actively getting involved in nation building and overthrowing governments. And Basil has never used the term CIA on the show, but I know in private, and you could stop me, Basil, if you really want to. You could stop me if I'm talking about private conversations that we've had that you're particularly. You've been okay. Strong-willed. That's a good word. I'll use that. He's very strong-willed when it comes to talking about the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, the notion of murdering leaders of other countries. Over the years, Basil's been a student of Chile, where Salvador Allende was the first freely elected Marxist president in the Western Hemisphere. Of course, Fidel Castro came to power through a revolution, and since then, Cesar Chavez has been a freely elected representative, freely elected president of a country in the Western Hemisphere. But Basil says back in the early 1970s, Salvador Allende, he wants not only you history buffs to get on this discussion, but on this thought, but he wants everybody to hear a little bit about Salvador Allende. And, Basil sneers. He sneers when he says this, but he's talking about how apparently he's quite convinced from his scholarly studies that it was the CIA who murdered Salvador Allende in Chile. And not only murdered him, but put someone in power behind him, after him, Augusto Pinochet, who murdered many, many, many tens of thousands of his own countrymen in a way that didn't seem to bother the CIA. They had gotten the Marxist out of there, and Basil also wants to know. Okay, yeah, Basil also wants to know when we're not talking about politics here. We're talking about economics, because Marxism involves the collective ownership of all factories and all the entire scope of ownership of companies by the government and run by individuals that basically run their own factory in a way that seeks to make the factory as efficient as possible, but also seeks to be mindful of the environment and mindful of damage that the company can do, and try to avoid that while trying to benefit its employees and benefit the country as a whole. Okay, fair enough. But again, back to the idea of fear. Now, we had the caller in just now at the beginning, I guess a little bit before the beginning of the show, but talked Friday evening. We had the caller in, and she would not identify herself, but I have a suspicion that it might be Corey from Gainesville, Florida. The voice sounded a bit like the caller in we had a few weeks ago, talking about the Philippines, where she's from, and also talking about Puerto Rico, and making the comparison of the Philippines and Puerto Rico in terms of the colonial influence of the United States government in those countries, and being very much controlling of those particular geographical areas. Now, but I think she was talking about, and I think she may have actually been. Remember, she called in and talked about rearranging the letters in President Obama's name, and Barack Hussein Obama coming up with the different frightening new combinations of letters and words. But I don't know. What do you want to take this? Okay, you want to go on and talk a little bit more about how the people who are traditionally referred to nowadays as lefties having a fear of large corporations, and about how people who are traditionally referred to as from the right having their fear directed more at big government. But okay, hold on. Okay. Basil BuddhaCat presents. We're actually Sunday morning. We are discussing fear, and the fear of big government and the fear of large corporations. Do you have a question for? Well, I guess you can't have a question for fear, because fear is not here to represent itself in any way except to frighten us, and not doing a very good job apparently, because. As Basil noted in Friday night's show, we had. Did you watch it? Did you watch Friday night's show? Yeah. Okay. Okay. This is Larry from Nova Scotia. Larry's from Nova Scotia, which is in Canada, and Larry wants to talk about healthcare. But before we go to there, Larry, let's. You see a lot of media through the internet from the United States. What's your thought about this notion of people being gripped and consumed by fear in America? Okay, yep. Larry says that's exactly what he wanted to talk about. He wants to compliment Basil on his well-groomed look, and Basil in return wants to note that his co-host and interpreter is not nearly as well-groomed as he could be. Okay, look. Basil, think about it this way. It's my slightly unkempt look that makes you look better. And Basil says, "Oh, okay." So, okay. And did I get your intonation right? Did I get the words right, too? Did I translate correctly? Yep. Yeah, you did. So, Larry, what do you want to talk about in terms of fear? how do Canadians look at life? Do they look at it in a less fearful way? Okay, Larry says that he actually wants to explain why Canadians are not as fearful of either big government or large corporations as Americans seem to be. And he says it has a lot to do with Canada's healthcare system. Okay. We've talked on Progressive Soup a lot about healthcare, Larry, but let's talk a little bit about Canadians' healthcare system, because a lot of folks from the Tea Party and from the right side of the equation in America, the right-wing groups in America, complain about Canadian healthcare, say it's ineffective, that the Canadians come to America to get their health care. Larry says there's a grain of truth to that, Larry says, but it's really twisted out of the truth mostly. He says that Larry has an uncle who's fairly well off, lives in Canada with him. He lives in Nova Scotia also, Larry? Yeah. Larry says he lives in Nova Scotia, and his uncle needed a hip replacement, and a hip replacement would have taken about, the estimate was for between 4 and 5 months in Canada. He would have gotten the hip replacement. It's a fairly simple operation, and he would have had it done in between 4 and 5 months, he said. Maybe a little sooner, but probably that was a reasonable estimate. Larry says that he came down from Canada, his uncle did, and had the hip replacement done in America because, first of all, money was not an issue to him. He had plenty of cash on hand, and to him, having the hip done a little quicker was worth paying thousands of dollars and coming into America and having it done. Okay, now, how does that impact the overall Canadian healthcare system? Okay, Larry says that, in fact, that the healthcare system in Canada is quite good, that everyone is taken care of well. You don't wait to see a doctor. You get taken care of. There are delays in some things that are not considered as life-threatening, which would include hip replacement. He says that for basic health care in terms of routine medical checkups, okay, are you talking about preventative medicine? Yeah. Larry says preventative medicine in Canada, not only is it available for everyone, regardless of income strata, everybody's on equal footing as far as that goes. He says that the preventative medicine is fabulous in Canada. They do a great job. Proof of that is that, I've read that. Proof of, I've seen that in many. I've cross-referenced that quite a bit, Larry, because, we do a lot of fact-checking these days with the Internet, because anything can be said on the Internet, but not everything can be truthful on the Internet. Okay, Larry says that life expectancy in Canada is, well, in his words, significantly longer than in America. It's a couple years longer. Life expectancy, he says the general quality of health is better in Canada. He says that for you folks out there that are pro-life, or call yourself pro-life with quotes around them, he says that infant mortality in Canada is significantly lower. And a lot of kids in America, because their parents are not able to avail themselves of routine health care during a pregnancy, and because of that, the infant mortality rate in America is much higher than it is in Canada, and it is higher. It depends how you define much, but you're right about that, Larry. It is higher. Now, how does that tie in with your? You wanted to call in about fear, so let's talk about fear. Okay, Larry's saying that fear is not an overarching worry. It's not an overarching feeling in Canada, because they feel taken care of. They feel a sense of comfort. They have good health care. He says that even though the unemployment rate is from time to time higher in Canada than it is in America, that folks don't worry, because they're taken care of in terms of unemployment. that the government gives them things to do in exchange for collecting unemployment, and it gives them a lot of job training to keep folks geared towards heading further into the 21st century in terms of jobs, in terms of technical jobs. It says Canada's got a lot more reasonable, a lot stronger industrial base than the United States. Now, why is that, Larry? What's your thoughts on why the industrial base is stronger in Canada than in America? Is it because of regulations? Environmental regulations are more lax there? No, Larry says absolutely not. Environmental regulations are stronger in Canada, and yet because unions are strong, union employees work harder. Union employees have a stake in their companies, and because of that, he thinks that's the principal reason why the industrial base in Canada is stronger. And in fact, Canada has a large portion of auto manufacturing that it didn't until America's auto manufacturers shipped a lot of their work out to Canada and other countries. But yeah, he's also noting that Ford's doing well in America, that Chrysler's doing well in America, and he thinks unions are keeping them on the way to strengthening up America again, and he's proud of that fact because he in fact cares a lot about the United States. They're Canada's next door neighbor. Okay, we're going to have to break away from the show now. Larry, thank you very much for calling in. We're going to talk further in future shows about fear, about some of these things that grip Americans, and make comparisons to folks in other countries, and have a good roundtable discussion about that. This has been Basil BuddhaCat Presents. I'm David Stevenson, Basil's interpreter and co-host. And at center slot, Basil BuddhaCat. And we've kept the clamps on fear, and we hope to continue to do that. Good day. They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, on Wall Street. Meow.